Hello there. Welcome back to Turning Towards the Shadow, where we stand on the phrasage, truth is a pathless land. No man, woman, or organization can lead another man to truth, or woman. We certainly can help each other sharpen our blades of common sense. It's Christmas Eve. New Year's Eve, coming up upon it. So it made me think about the imperious urge and people who will be making New Year's resolutions. And again, these are just suggestions. I'll put up the breakdown that I've made of habit, unhealthy habit, and addiction. The imperious urge. Viktor Frankl has spoken about freedom being the space between impulse and response. I've spoken about in the past. I feel, from my own perspective, how I've engaged with that, it's been very beneficial for me, is understanding that freedom is the space between impulse and reaction. And that if we could, in that space, if we could observe the reaction before we take it, before we react, we are free. But when someone is in the throes of, say, like an addiction or the imperious urge, it's so immediate that people just react. And some to a point where people almost observe it as the reaction has become an aspect of oneself because it's so habitual that they just see it as, oh, well, I do this thing. But it could be to our detriment as an unhealthy habit or even an addiction. And one of the things that I've come to understand, and I don't want to be anybody's guru, teacher. These are just, truth is a pathless land. No man or woman can lead another man to truth, but we certainly can help each other sharpen our blades of common sense. The imperious urge will when we're going through a process and we have an imperious urge. Generally speaking, it's the feeling we want to go away. We want to go away. We want that feeling to stop. We want to do something or come up with some type of formula that will just stop the imperious urge, so we don't have to feel that and contend with that. It's an impossibility. Maybe one could take a pill or engage in another activity that may be good if what we're trying, the imperious urge, is dangerous to us. But at times it could be trading up, the imperious urge. But before I muddle this up too much, leaning on Viktor Frankl, the space between impulse and response, and as I suggest before, between impulse and reaction, once we become more aware, or maybe we could say that, the imperious urge, I want to stop doing this thing, and I'm going to create a New Year's resolution. Right? The suggestion is maybe one will just stop it. But if someone keeps on continuing with whatever the action is that they want to stop, one thing is to say, this is not an action I'm taking. It is a reaction. Right? It is a habitual reaction. And that what one can do is understand that, one, if we don't do it, take the action. We don't. But it's so hard to tell someone that's in a habit not to. Right? So there's many things that people can do, you could do. Some people say prayer. All right. A suggestion is, I remember I was trying to give up a serious habit without going too much of my story. And someone said, "Well, say the St. Francis prayer." I said, "Prayer." I said, "I don't believe in um, a higher power, this kind of thing." And so he said, "Well, it's just don't. It's not about a higher power." He was like, "Just think there was someone who used to live like this." But what I came to understand, so I started saying the St. Francis prayer, truth, right? Asking God to be an instrument of thy peace. But over time, how I understood it, I took out the God aspect of it, and I said, may one be an instrument of peace. Where there is hatred, may one be love. Where there is error, may one be truth. Where there is discord, may one be harmony. Where there is doubt, may one be faith. Where there, blah, blah, blah. Because for me, that's the shift. Anyway, the suggestion is, if there is an imperious urge, scheduling a change may not do it. If it does, fantastic. Good luck with it. But if, say, someone has a New Year's resolution, and in the past it has not worked out, just become more aware when you start getting the imperious urge. And that's the thing. It is instantaneous. And people take the action before they can even process it. The trick is to stop. Say it's smoking a cigarette, right? Or say it's eating a cookie or having a drink or whatever it may be. Before you go to do it, just stop. And know that in that moment you're not doing it, you're free. But if you do it, you won't be. And just whatever it may be, maybe it's the St. Francis prayer. Because we have habitual thinking, there's a whole process that's kind of putting us in this reactive state of being. But what I'm suggesting is that understanding the space between impulse and reaction is freedom. We could stay in that space. I'm kind of going around this thing because it's really. And here's another thing. I heard someone say, we were talking to this gentleman who had a very severe drinking addiction, and he was in this place. It was like a rehabilitation center, and this guy, he was a veteran, and we were talking to this guy, and they were trying to, like, long story short, the guy said, well, listen, you know what, as soon as I get out of this place, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get a haircut, and I'm going to go do what I do. And the guy said, you know what, don't do that. Do something else. Don't go get the haircut. And so that's the suggestion. If you know if you are going to make New Year's resolution to stop something, understand the things you do before and change. Just don't do it. Don't set yourself up. But understand that the imperious urge or the negative feelings that we get from not taking the action we want are not just going to disappear, but in that space, we may be able to stay in it. And one of the suggestions is, what we need to practice is staying in that uncomfortable space and understand that it's really not going to kill us. And the longer we could not take whatever the reaction is, and once you don't take that action, you are in the positive. You are in a stance of action rather than reacting to life. And that is the space of freedom. Even if you don't do anything, just don't do the negative thing your reaction. And this is very, I'm talking about this like this is simplifying a personal experience that's very difficult, and people go to the gates of hell and death dealing with this conversation that I'm sharing. And it is not a light conversation, but it can be addressed in such a simple manner. Though what comes with doing this is pain that only the individual can experience, and I never will put anybody's pain or struggle on a measuring scale. It's not for me to do. All I'm saying here, all I'm sharing with you is that the imperious urge may just be a habitual state of reaction that we have embodied. And it is not necessarily us. And that if, say, the next day that reactive state of being that is the imperious urge that we have taken on as a character defect, some say, or a flaw in our character, may simply be this habitual reaction that we have embodied, that we can not, if we just don't do it, it dissipates. So the suggestion is, say someone makes a New Year's resolution, the next day comes and all of a sudden the imperious urge takes that person over. And you're ready to throw the New Year's resolution out of the window. Forget the New Year's resolution. It's in the moment. And now, I'm not a doctor, and this is for someone to really understand where they are themselves. People may have a family. There are people who, I worked in bars for many years, and there was a lot of old timers in some of the older bars who would drink during the day. And, people don't realize there's some of the old timers, they were drinking for many years, and they were fine. An older guy would get a little bit older and get a cold, and then people would come in and want to take care of him, and also they want to decide this guy's not going to drink anymore. Oh, it's good for you to stop drinking. And they would die because their bodies were so used to doing these things. People who have families, maybe a couple of drinks or whatever they do gets them through the day to get what they need to get done so they could feed their family. So these things there's a lot of things attached to this conversation. But in the long run, right, the imperious urge doesn't have to be in charge of someone's life. This the reactive self. We can be free of these things, but it is far more difficult to be said than actually done. But it all takes place in the present moment. And what I suggest about habit, habit, it's not only about these habitual actions we take, right? But it's what we are denying ourselves. And it's not just feeling okay, but when one has a habit and we do something constantly, and this could be even something that's not, we wouldn't consider unhealthy, but when we do something over and over, we are denying ourselves from the intuitive, because we're doing something out of rote, and we're denying ourselves from other options that may be open to us from the intuitive natural world. But you know what? It's okay. There's no harm, no foul. We just do this one thing over and over. Unhealthy habit is when we do something over and over and we block out all the other options, the intuitive aspects of life, to our detriment. Addiction is when we have this habit that kind of takes on the functionings of our consciousness, of our body, of our functioning of everyday life, of our natural organism, right? The natural processes of our body, our mind, our spirit. I gave an example in the past. I had a friend who was a nurse and told a story of he was at work and someone was taking a red-eye flight from London to New York. And that flight, it was an emergency flight they got, and a big-time business person, and there was no booze on the plane. And by the time they hit New York, they had gone into delirium tremors. And what had happened was they were such a constant drinker, and they always had access to their booze. But since what happens is the alcohol was taking over the functions of the nervous system, the calming of the nervous system, and whatever the details. That's what happens when we have a habit that becomes an addiction. So, the imperious urge, also, we kind of had this idea that it is who we are, but it is not. We live in habitual reactions that we come to understand as ourselves, but in fact they're not. They're just simply reactions that have become habitual, that we perceive as ourselves, and we don't always have a good sense of who what. It doesn't always give us pleasure. Let's say, to keep it mild. So I'm going to leave it at that. Turning towards the shadow again. These are for those people who are looking to go into this work or not even that work, looking into observing themselves more and understanding the human condition, going towards what Jung would call the shadow self, and to be free of what I would say is the bondage of self, or the reactive state of being, the reactive self, and to be in a place where one can simply observe the present moment, discern all the factors using common sense, and take action, honest action in the present moment. And it's simply that easy. Take care.